Hi, my name is Terry Westwell and welcome back to Panic at the Book Club. This week we're discussing Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. So, same as usual, if you haven't read that book yet, I would suggest going and doing that first because there'll definitely be spoilers. And just a word of warning for anyone who is interested in reading the book, I would suggest it being an adult-only audience because it does touch upon a lot of subjects like rape, assault, gun violence, so I really wouldn't suggest it for anyone younger than 18. But on that note, let's get started. So from a very young age, Arnie went through a lot of very traumatic experiences, which really strove to make her reinvent herself, prove her worth, and also work at getting anything that a typical woman is supposed to want in life. Walking through her life as she revisits these traumatic experiences, you get a really good understanding as to why she is the way she is and unravels the story of exactly what happened and why. Sometimes I felt like the text went on a bit without it really saying all that much. Like, don't get me wrong, at times I was really glad that it didn't go into too much detail. But other times I felt like it kept saying so much without it even really saying anything. That makes sense? Probably not. We would often feel a little emotionless, which I think makes sense because it's a first person narrative and the main character is so guarded. I mean, she described herself as a cold hearted. Um, so it makes sense, but at times it just kind of made it a little bit difficult to read. She definitely had reason to be a she definitely had reason to be a bit cold-hearted and a bit reserved and drawn back from everyone, but it really did make it a bit harder to read. It didn't help that some of the chapters were so long. Like, I don't know about you, but before putting the book down, I like to be able to finish reading the full chapter. Not with this book. This book was long chapters of present, past in that sort of pattern, which was good and it was interesting, and you got to see things develop at a nice pace. Just made it difficult to pay attention at times, and it just meant that I often had to put the book down mid chapter, which I don't usually like to do. So the book was super obsessed with food, which is not unusual for people like the main character who was struggling with trauma, or like people who may be struggling with any other mental health problems. It's not uncommon for them to be obsessed with food, whether or not it's something that they find comfort in, or if it's just something that they feel like they can actually control. I don't know. There are many reasons, but for some reason, food always seems to play a part in mental health. I don't, I don't know about you. I got super bored of one, them referring to people as heifers and stuff like that, even when it came to herself. And two, bloody diets. Whether or not that was, you know, pigging out and gorging themselves on food late at night, or that bloody wedding diet. I love food just as much if not more, than the next guy. But I could not read any more about her food obsession. When the main character is talking about herself, she just, like, when she's giving herself compliments, they're always accompanied with like a backhanded insult, like, "Oh, I'm pretty, but I have to work at it." Or, I'm 4 years younger than my fiance, but that's not as good as 8. You know, and it's like, for the love of God. She's really glib and rude, and even as a teenager, before all of the events happened, before any of that happened, she doesn't seem to care about anybody but herself. And none of the other characters are much better. Pretty much all the guys were narcissistic, abusive, one way or another. All the women were shallow and superficial. Like, there wasn't one redeeming character in the whole book. The women were overly obsessed with being skinny and getting married. Like, that was the only important thing in life. The main character went through way too much shit just to end up with Luke, who was another abusive, manipulative douchebag. You know, he would basically treat her as though her career wasn't as important because, well, when they got married, she was to bear his children and have dinner cooked and ready on the table for when he got home. And it was just like, sorry? What year is this? And he was so unsupportive in her grief. Like, she should have got over it already. She shouldn't need to talk about it, and she should just shut up about it. Everyone grieves differently. Everyone heals differently and at different times. And even once you've dealt with stuff, even once you've accepted what's happened, you're never allowed to talk about it again. So many characters were crappy, racist, homophobic, and they're supposed to be my age and they're supposed to be millennials. Now, I don't know a single millennial who wouldn't expect a hostile response to that sort of behaviour. Like, in this day and age, it's just not on, not acceptable, and I just don't think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Does that still happen to that degree? Yet another example of Luke being a dick, making Annie feel bad because she got upset by the racist and homophobic comments made by his friends. Like, it's not fine to ignore those sort of comments just because, well, that's just how they are. Or another one, you know, what is it? Oh, well, they're just all like, it was different for them back then. I don't care. They know better. They know better to sit than to say stuff like that. Now, moving on to a slightly different, unrelated topic. Names are really important. So, in the book, I actually found it quite difficult at times to distinguish between Luke and Liam. Now, obviously, they're very different characters, and they're even set in different time zones. So one was in the past and one was in the present. I found it really difficult to remember what the fiance's name was because is it Luke or is it Liam? You know. Like, it would take me a split second to realise which one it was she was talking about. I feel like you were introduced to so many characters, and I'm not going to talk about them all today because I don't remember what half of them were called. I don't remember any context behind the majority of them. You were just introduced to so many people, it was hard to keep track. And I get a big part of that is because she, part of it was in the past and some of it was in the present, and she reinvented herself and met new people along the way. And so you do have to meet a lot of people. But at the same time, sometimes I felt like it just could have reined it back a little bit. Especially considering that some of the interactions I just kind of felt were meaningless interactions that didn't really move the story along. Like, I didn't really care about these people. Why the hell was I reading about them? You know? Since last week's glitter, there's gold glitter everywhere. There's gold glitter on all my stuff. So I felt bad for the shark. Now, even before all of the events happened, because she didn't even really have any real friends, because her so-called friends called her the shark behind her back because of the way she looked. I mean, for the life of me, I don't remember what her real name was. Anna? Or Beth, I think. But I've really felt bad for her because I just felt like even her friends were bloody making fun of her behind her back. Like, these teenagers. I don't remember being that mean when I was in high school. Like, I don't really remember anyone being that mean. Now, Dean, Liam, and I say Peyton, just can't with them. Disgusting. Also, you can't use the excuse, "Oh, we didn't realise that what we were doing was bad." Like, I'm sorry, how? What a load of there's no way you could do something like that and think all is a-okay. I understand why it took Arnie. I understand why it took Arnie so long to accept what happened to her. Like, it just does sometimes for victims. I don't know if it's your own mind's way of trying to protect yourself from what happened, or if it was just denial in not wanting to accept that something like that could happen to you in the first place. Especially, like, if everything that you've been told is saying that it's your own fault. Like, you shouldn't have been drinking, you shouldn't be wearing that, or like, or we shouldn't have been out so late with those boys anyway, even if those boys are supposed to be your friend. Like you shouldn't do those things. And, you should be careful, you should protect yourself and look after yourself. But you shouldn't need to. You know what I mean? Not your fault if something happens. It doesn't make it your fault. The story gave you more insight as to who Arthur was and what Arthur did and why Arthur did it. But in the end, I agree with Annie's point. Like, you don't just plan something like that and do something like that and be perfectly sane. Like, something must have had to have been wrong with him in the start for him to even consider doing something like that. But apart from these big, insane, wow actions, like what the hell actions from these characters, there was nothing, there were no depth to any of them. Even the teacher, Andrew, I feel like in the end, he just wanted a bloody medal for not sleeping, not cheating on his wife and sleeping with an ex student. Like, and slightly off topic, when the events have happened and she wakes up in hospital, she asks for, things to brush her teeth, brush her face, and this nurse comes back and she gives her the toothbrush and toothpaste. She gives her a Dove bar of soap. Like, after everything this poor girl has been through, did she really need that on top of everything? My face would dry out. I would like to make it clear that I didn't dislike this book. Did I love it? Not really. But I enjoyed the story, but there wasn't a decent character in the whole book. Okay, so Annie redeemed herself a little bit at the end when she left her fiance behind and she managed to get a little bit of her independence back. And for a book that was about such tragic events, like, I don't know, it's weird for the reader not to connect to any of the characters at all. Like, a book like this should really make a reader want to cry, and it should really make the reader feel all of these emotions, but instead I just kind of, I enjoyed it and I wanted to see how the story progressed and I wanted to see where it went, but at times I just felt bored. Would I recommend it? Probably. I think if I knew that the person was interested in reading about that sort of topic, but didn't want such an emotionally heavy read, then I probably would suggest that book. And I have to believe that that was a design style that the author decided to use because it does make sense. The main character was really guarded, so it makes sense that the book is as well. Um, but although I enjoyed it, I'm just not really sure that that sort of style was for me. But on that note, please let me know what you think. Did you enjoy it? So next week we'll be discussing Tag Your Dead by Kathryn Foxfield. So don't forget to get your comments in by Monday the 5th of June latest to be a part of the discussion. The following week, on the 14th of June, we'll be discussing Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. And don't forget, if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, then I'll actually be listing the next 4 books in the description below. On that note, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.